Hello YouTube, it's me again back with another video, and this one is not quite like my normal videos. This one was done for Draw with Jazza's coloring competition for January 2018, and I am so psyched about this one. I absolutely love the original drawing that the line art is based on. If you actually watch back on my channel, I drew a ghostly figure in my color palette challenge who was loosely inspired by the ghost he did in this drawing. I was going to use the same shading technique that I did for that one, but I decided that might be a little too extra, so I didn't. So for this, I started off with the roses because I really wanted to do like really cool dead roses. And I'm bummed that the recording software didn't really capture the texture that I managed to put into these roses. Especially because in the full version you can't really see it unless you zoom in on them anyway, so oh well. So I will warn you that my recording software goofed at the end, but I did put in some screenshots of the various progress points that I made, and I kept in as much of the recording as I could salvage. If any of you know a better free recording software than Hypercam 2, I am so open because this is the second time Hypercam has done this to me, and I'm so tired. So I went with a purpley vibe for this paper, and I don't really know why, I just thought it would really complement the roses. It doesn't completely match with the sort of brown and blue vibe that I have for the rest of the piece, but you know what, I kind of like it anyway. So what I'm doing here is I am coloring in our male, I called him the mourner in all of my layers, so the mourner is being colored in. I did miss a couple patches of his skin in this initial, like, color placement, which bummed me out, like you will not believe. So I go in, I add color, and I add shading. Now I bet you're wondering, why is this all black and gray? I thought this was a coloring challenge. Well, first off, he said it could be black and gray, but my roses are color, so obviously I couldn't leave it all black and gray. That's because I wanted to get all of my shadows in really well. I wanted to make sure that I had all of the right contrast and add some really rich, deep shadows, and then I went in with a soft light filter and colored him in. But first, I went in and colored my ghostly lady. I decided to leave her actually grayscale. I thought it would be a nice contrast where she's kind of black and white, suggesting that she's not completely there anymore. She's lost something of what made her human. Here, the shading of her skin was deleted, which really bummed me out because I was really proud of that. But you still get to see most of me coloring her in, so no harm, no foul, you guys still get to see the end result. I'm not too peeved about it. You know, it happens. So because I went with the black and gray, rather, for her outfit, and her in general, I had to figure out ways to vary the tones. So I went with darker shades for instance, in the sash, and I made the skirt the lightest color as I possibly could, so that you could get some variation in her clothes, and so that she looked a little bit more interesting, you know? A little bit more poppy. That's not a good way to say that, oh well. So yeah, I don't really have too much to say about her clothing, so while I am continuing to shade in her clothing, I will just briefly say, I am so in love with Draw with Jazza, and I know that it's really sad to give a little fan shout out, but I want to give a fan shout out because he's incredible, and when he made the video about art block, it was incredibly amazing because art block is something I'm actually suffering with right now. There are many reasons for that. That I won't get into in this video, but it's something that I'm kind of having to figure out and deal with because there's a lot on my plate that I need to get done, and I only have so much time to do it. But watching art YouTubers has really been very helpful. You know, two of my personal idols and friends on YouTube, Zoe Mariner and Jenna Drawing, they're great, and I love them dearly. And Draw with Jazza is just amazing. Enough said. I'm done. There, I don't know if you saw for a minute I added white randomly. It was because for some reason the lines of like the telephone pole wires confused me, and I thought maybe I had missed a part of her leg, and I was like, do I need to go back in and shade this leg? And then I realized I was just being dumb and they were telephone wires, and I was really embarrassed. So yeah, we're dealing still with the skirt. My goodness, I did not realize I spent so much time on her clothing. I am really proud of how the shading on these characters came out. I think it does say something to how much I need to work on my character line arts that I can pull off this much shading in fan art with amazing line art. Then, you know, with my own line art, it looks a little derpy. So there's something to be said for that. I'm working on it. I'll get there eventually. So at first I wanted to kind of go with a light brown hair color for her, but because I was like, well, I'm going to be doing the grayscale, so I decided to go with a more dark, sort of black hair for her, so that it would really stand out and be very striking, with the black and gray, and it would really stand out against the background, especially because later I take down her opacity a little bit, so she disappears a little bit, so you can see sort of the sky and background through her. So I wanted her hair to be really striking. See, there I am, changing the tone. I didn't go completely black so that I could have some shadows, and so that you could still see the line art through the shading. So that was important to me. For the ghost, I wanted to add a lot more highlights than I did for him. Sorry, for a minute there, it's kind of hard to tell what I'm doing. I'm very sorry about that. For her, I wanted to make her look a lot more luminescent and like she was capturing a lot more light than he was, so I wanted to add a lot more highlights and a lot more striking light. What I also think was kind of important to me was making sure that their skin tones looked a little bit different, because I wanted her to be very pale and ghostly, and I wanted him to look a little bit more sun-scorched in a sense. So I made him darker and kind of made it look like, you know, he's out in the sun more often. And it's kind of hard to tell with the dark blue background just how dark I made his skin tone, but I do some tweaks towards the end that help kind of bring it all in together. I didn't go super dark, I just went a little bit darker than her skin tone. I'm going on about this way too long, I'm so sorry. I'm probably boring you all half to death. That said, I love the soft light filter. It's amazing, and it helps me to accomplish some really great things. I added in subtle blues and purples around the places where the shading was deepest. I don't know how much of that you can see because it's all going so fast, but this video was already so long. But I added subtle blues and purples. And then here, what I'm actually doing, I wanted the sort of tribal tattoos that he has on him to stand out, but I didn't want them to be just outlines. I don't know why, but when I saw the line art, it kind of struck me as those like red, like earthy red tattoos that you sometimes see, and I thought that that would be really cool with the sort of post-apocalyptic vibe, to give him these sort of earthy, reddish tattoos. So I went in with some black, or near black, so that I could just get everything solid and so that I could see the lines, but then later I went down and took down the opacity to make it a little less in your face, which is probably for the best. It looks much better when it's not punching you in the face with its opacity. I do really love this little design. I mean, obviously I love everything about this drawing, but those little tattoos, it's funny how when you're coloring something you realize that much more about how detailed it is. These goggles, I love these little goggles. I want them in real life. I love these little steampunk goggles. I need to make myself a pair of steampunk goggles. Ooh, so there, you saw me coloring in her eyes blue. There's a reason for that. I wanted her one facet, I guess you could say, of color to be her eyes, because kind of as a nod to the eyes or the windows of the soul, to sort of peer into the person she is. So even though she's dead, she's still got that same heart, and I wanted to kind of tap into that with that feeling of the power of love that was behind the original drawing. So in the original character design session, she was designed around having the power of love. So I wanted to kind of capture that in her eyes. Originally, I played with the idea of having like a little pink radiating from her chest, and later on you'll see me playing with that a little bit, I think. If the video goes on that long, I'm not sure when the video cuts out. But I ended up not liking it, so I didn't keep it. I loved the way I did the shading on this, like, corrugated, I think that's what it's called, corrugated metal sheet. I'm not sure why I was such a fan. Here I am adding in some rusty patches, and I thought that was really just, I liked that little touch, and I know it's a little, like, boasty to say how much I love that touch, but I love it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm proud of myself and my achievements. Here I went and looked up some really nice desaturated color palettes online so I could find some nice desaturated colors, just to have like a working baseline. You can kind of see them off in the corner sometimes. But I did end up going in and using the soft light filter to add a little bit more warmth. For this picture, I wanted to stick with a sort of blue and orange-y color palette. So all of my brown-y tones are based more on the orange spectrum, so that you can kind of get that complementary contrast of the blue and the orange, which then goes on to match the sky, which I based off of a sort of late sunset vibe. So I really like that, and I hope that you guys did too. I did add a little bit of a more yellowy brown on the edges, because I don't know, I just feel like when you look at wood slices, they're a little bit paler on the inside. That could be totally wrong, but that's the feeling I got, so that's the feeling I went with. Here's my little rope. If I could change anything about this rope, honestly, it would just be to make it a little bit darker. I feel like it's too bright, but, you know, I think it works in the finalized piece, so I'm okay with it. And here I am, being really sad and discovering that I didn't shade in part of his arm. I did look back at the original drawing later, and I'm not sure if that was meant to be part of his arm. I think it was, so I'm keeping it, but I could be wrong. But art is all about interpretation, right? Oh, so this little, like, arm cuff thing, I don't know what you would call it. I created a little backstory for it in my head. You want to hear? So, a little later on, you'll see me coloring his boot, and it has the same pattern at the top. So my thought is, he was walking around and one of his boots got torn, and instead of trying to figure it out or fix it, he got kind of impatient and wrapped it around his wrist, and he just never bothered to take it off. So now it's become like an integral part of his wardrobe because it fell off his boot one day after getting caught on some corrugated metal that was sticking out of the debris, and now it's like permanently a fixture of his arm. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. So here I went in and put in some bandages, and I ended up going in and adding like a little blood stain, because, I don't know, I thought it would be cool. I don't know. A little post-apocalyptic bloodiness for you. A little bit of gore. Why not? Here I'm going in and coloring in the blue, and what's funny is you can see it a lot better in the recording than I could in the actual Krita. The tones are much closer in Krita than they are here, so I eventually had to go in and use a gray background just so I could see what I was doing. Okay, so a little fun fact about this drawing bit here. What you don't see is the 2 days that I spent freaking out because my Krita broke. I couldn't draw at all in my Krita, and I ended up having to completely delete Krita and re-download it to get it to actually let me draw again, and I was devastated for 2 days because I couldn't figure it out, and you see none of that in the recording. So here I am coloring in the gas mask. I think I left some of the silver parts a little too bright, so I'm not quite happy about that, but I'll go with it. And here I am coloring in the boot, and I'm actually going in and just using the shades and shadows from the arm piece to just convey that sort of weird, funny backstory I created for this piece of the drawing. I don't know what it's actually supposed to be or if that has any bearing on it, but I thought it was funny, and that's how I interpreted it, and art is all about interpretation. Leave me alone. So here I made like the little extra part of his cape. At least that's what I think it is. I don't know. The little extra part of his cape, and I made it the same color as the top part because obviously. So I went in and shaded his pants, and we were probably about, we're about to lose the recording, and from there on it will be a little bit of the slideshow-like action, which cuts out me fumbling to figure out where I messed up, and doing some correcting in spots where for some reason the color was gone. I don't know why, but for some reason I just missed some spots of color, and it was weird, and I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm just coloring in his pants with a base shade of gray so that I can do some shading. Oh no, you actually see me messing up the layers. I didn't realize that was recorded. Interesting. So yes, I'm doing some shading of the pants. I tried to add a little bit of texture into the pants, but it's kind of hard to tell. You can see me using the textured brush here, but admittedly it doesn't have the punch I wanted it to. So I went to try and add in some like brown dirt spots on his pants, because I mean, he's a guy in the apocalypse. He ain't got time for, cleaning up his pants. Why would he have time for that? And when I was drawing this, I somehow envisioned him as a blonde. I don't know why. I just envisioned him with blonde hair. And there you see it. That is my vision of him with blonde hair, because my recording died. Here I added in the ground, and I made some of the pipes stand out, so that was great. Adding some shading and texture to the ground. Darkened the ground a little bit. I just sort of want to explain what was happening between each of these. Ooh, a little bit of recording. I added some color to the ground that I totally forgot to showcase when I hit this recording. But here I am coloring in the telephone poles. This is so weird, the fact that my recording software only kept chunks. I'm so sorry. I know that's lame. But it's better than nothing, and the rules do say that I have to post work in progress of some form, and I'm a YouTuber, so of course I posted a video. I'm not sure I can really count as a YouTuber, you know what I mean. So really there's not much interesting to say about the telephone poles. They're telephone poles. They are very well done telephone poles, but telephone poles all the same. So yeah, I added a little bit of green to the ground actually, which I thought was fun. Here I am experimenting with how to do the sky, and the sky did not in any way turn out the way I thought it would, but I actually kind of love it. I used a rough textured tool. You see that loading? That loading for me was 5 minutes. I made it 2 minutes for you, 2 seconds for you. Congratulations, you're welcome. So I added in some blur. I did an overlay layer of blur, and then added even more blur to wash it out. And then I kind of merged them in such a way that you could see some of the texture, and most of it was blurred. Added in some shading, some smoke coming from the back city. Also, again, another loading screen that took much longer in real life. And then I added in a little late sunset vibe. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the video. I added a few lighting effects here, coming off our ghost lady, like she's lighting him a little bit. Added in some deeper shadows. And then I went in, fixed some of the contrast, and there we go. There is the final image. I hope you like it as much as I do. So have a good morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime time of day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.